The woman's place is in the home. The issue of the role of women within society today is a topical issue amongst many feminists and sociologists today. The arguments which suggest the place of women is not considered far-fetched from reality. During biblical years, women played a significant role within the home. Surprisingly, many women whom are Christians disagree with the suggestion of them being in the home. They have ignored the very scripture in which their faith has been hinged on. It is a shame today that women no longer want to be mothers and homemakers as the Bible teaches. It can be argued that the sentiments shared by communists are partly to be blamed for this yearning to enter the workplace. The argument being used by many families suggests that the inability of one person to properly finance the home created the opportunity or necessity for the women to work. They tend to share the view that everyone should shoulder the responsibility of society's finances since everyone benefits. To many, the view that a woman's place is in the home is an old one. During the early occupation of the Caribbean, women were primarily in charge of nurturing new family members into society. This ideology has been with us for centuries. During the years of slavery, most house slaves were women. They performed the menial jobs around the home. The belief that a woman's place is in the home is an argument which spans throughout society across many generations. The raising and nurturing of children is best done by the mother of those children. The great majority of people firmly believed that the most valuable contribution a woman could make to society was to stay home and raise her children, feed her family, and devote her efforts to providing a comfortable and supportive home life. Many persons have held the view that the home is the natural place for the woman. It is believed that the workplace is the natural place for the man. To many, the man is the original breadwinner of the family. As a result of modernization, industrialization and the rise to prominence of the feminist theory, the ideology of women becoming independent and working her own monies have come to the fore, and society has come to realize that what may have been best for one era is not necessarily best for another. Society argues that it takes both the man and women to finance the home. Thus argues that the era of the woman remaining in the home has ended. Society now believes that the idea of the woman staying at home to facilitate the nurturing of the family is an old and flexible values that confined a woman for the most part to her home. They also suggest that this principle restricts women to domestic duties such as the raising and nurturing of her children, cooking, cleaning, and so forth, have given way to new values, in which family roles and obligations are based. Many feminists theorize that women should be independent and less dependent on men for support. They also argue in some quarters that women during the days of old had little to and was limited in their skills. It can be argued, however, that independence does not necessarily suggest working outside the home. It can be argued that a woman who stays at home can be independent and play a vital role in the family values and morals. During the days of old, women had skills. During the era of the Taínos, the woman was the one who practiced farming. They took care of the crops and animals. Women taught themselves skills. During the colonization period, the women within the homes of our colonizers practiced the playing of musical instruments and sewing and mending of garments. Women during the earlier years of human civilization saw their role in the home as equally important as the male. They never sought to compete with their male counterparts. In that era, families were more stable, and women were more docile and tender-hearted. A man's home was his palace, and he was the king in it. Are we to suggest the same today? Within the families, the children had their mothers to prepare them for school, welcome them home after school, and to share their experiences at school with them. The mother had the responsibility of assisting the child/children with assignments. The bonds between mothers and children were stronger then than they are purported to be now. During the earlier days of human civilization, the women had a very strong influence in their children's life. Mother, was privileged to be at home and provide emotional support along with the counseling of their children, until they become a productive member of society. The mother took the nurturing of their children very seriously. Many argue that the economic situation during the earlier years of human existence did not exist. This argument is weak. In every society throughout history, economic prosperity has always been seasonal. Crimes may not have been so great, but based on the availability of resources and the development of technology, then criminal activities exist then also. Indeed, crime and violence were not so prevalent, but to think of it, there is nothing a mother can do outside of the home to prevent crime and violence. It is the value system taught in the home which encourages the child or children to discipline in their homes and the wider society. It can be argued that the absence of mothers from the home due to their hope of achieving financial prosperity, have left a void within the home. The respect for authority which should be entrenched within the younger generation has become obsolete. Compared to days of old, mothers whom nurtured their child or children by staying home emphasized and sought to maintain the above-listed character, that of a law-abiding, respectable and moral individual. Today, young couples are having problems in their homes. Many females are unaware of their responsibilities as a wife and mother. They were never taught by their mother the ways in which they should honor their husbands or spouses. During the days of old, when the woman stayed home, from an early age girls were taught to honor their husbands and to model good moral standards in the community. Women were leaders in their own rights because they were the cornerstones upon which families were built. Societies were less violent and corrupt when a woman's place is in the home was the norm. The era of females seeking empowerment has changed the landscape of the family. This occurred after the feminist perspective was resurging in the early 1960s. As a result of this perspective gaining traction, the structure of the family deteriorated drastically. It was suggested then that the role of women was be like the man. Women began competing with their male counterparts for recognition in every possible occupation. No longer women would wear the title of as home builders, they now saw themselves independent and free to make the bold step to finance their own cause. As a result of this move by many women, many men no longer extended the courtesies to women. They stopped giving up their seats to them in a crowded bus or place. Opening and closing doors became absurd. Equal rights became the popular feminist phrase, so men responded by treating women like men. Women began to be a part of the hustle and bustle of everyday life, having both they and their husbands returning home in the evenings tired and wanting some attention. That of course ceased to exist, equality existed instead. Today many women are faced with the task of performing multiple tasks. They now engage themselves in their daily responsibilities at work, while having to still meet their obligations at home. The strenuous task at home and work have many cases resulted in infertility amongst many females throughout many families throughout the Caribbean and the world. Many females are so embarked in their financial planning and careers they have no interest in a family and are thus alone during some stages of their life. They tend not to have anyone to share their joys and sorrows with them, nor do they have any hope of having children whom would help to care for them whenever they require home care. Many dysfunctional families throughout the Caribbean occurs as a result of females becoming too involved in meeting their career goals. Life tends to get stressful for the female and become overbearing on the husband. Many males become promiscuous whenever the females within the home fail to adhere to their needs. They require love, affection, care and feeling of being in charge. In an effort to achieve these, many men tend to have extramarital affairs which increase the risk of contracting sexually transmitted diseases. Female children within the home tend to be ignored and are allowed to go ahead with their lifestyle unmonitored. This in many cases results in juvenile delinquencies, teenage pregnancies and children running away from home. The ideals of the feminist theory have led many females to opt to be single parents. By choice many females prefer to live alone with their child or by themselves. This trend is mostly common in developed countries. In many developed countries the practice of women living by themselves is the norm. Women are constantly seeking ways to move up the social ladder. They seek to reach this dimension by virtue of education. The age in which women are getting married has increased globally. Women are now getting married after their studies, which usually last throughout their prime childbearing age years. Most of these marriages don't last long anyway. The fact is that, women throughout the Caribbean and the world, although they have to share whatever little time they have at the end of the day with their spouses and children, they still have to find time to prepare for their jobs the next day. As a result of the competitive edge within the workplace today, The family at times is neglected and the family falls apart. The competitive edge is so great that women are now competing with men for jobs men, once held for centuries. It is necessary for women to get back to basics, taking their rightful place in the home. It is believed that the statistics which shows more females being employed throughout the Caribbean will decrease. Why is this necessary? In many industries across the world including the Caribbean, regardless of the nature of the job, men are paid at a higher rate than women. In many Caribbean countries men are unemployed and seeking employment. The basic principle of women staying home would encourage men to be more employed and play a more integral role in the economic development of the region. Thus, if the husband was to replace his wife within many of these industries, he would receive employment and also receive more in remuneration than his wife did. Man would then be able to uphold his or her responsibilities as being the breadwinners for their families. Men would be compelled to retire from their complacency and maximize their potentials. As long as women continue their demand for equality, men will become less accountable for adhering to their roles as shepherds in their families and women will continue to find themselves having to bear most of the economic as well as the emotional stresses which exist within families. The arguments above are worth mentioning, but the arguments shared by the feminist may also have some philosophical ideology which seems logical and may justify the move of women to seek equality with men. The feminist would suggest that the idea of the women staying at home is a clear sign on human rights violation. They suggest that this practice is a socialization cultural retention which seeks to belittle women. They believe that women have the same value to offer to society like men. They believe that men have justified the position of the women staying at home so as to ensure that men remain the only sex striving for upward social mobility within the general society. The views of the feminist are similar in construct as those shared by Karl Marx. Radical feminist shares the sentiments of Karl Marx that capitalism is a tool used by men to oppress women. There is a belief that women staying at home and taking care of the family is a clear demonstration of women oppression. According to both theories, men control women overtly and covertly whenever they insist that a woman's place is in the home. During the early days women were not allowed to hold position of any prominence in society. Women were not allowed to hold government posts or political positions. Women were not allowed to hold any position which makes them superior to men. The underlying tone of this effort was to position women's submissive role in society. Women according to the feminist experienced sexism and the problem of inequality. The evolution of women's role in society saw them leaving the environment of their home and spawning within educational institutions and the workplace. It is strongly believed that the rise of capitalism idealism contributed to the separation of the family household from commodity production. The control of men over women in the family was solidified. It is interesting to note however that birth of capitalism fostered the possibility of women's liberation from family-based patriarchy by creating possibilities for women to work in wage labor and become economically independent of husbands and fathers. Engels stresses, however, that because of the problem of unpaid housework, a private task allocated to women in the sexual division of labor of capitalism, full women's liberation can only be achieved with the development of socialism and the socialization of housework and child-rearing and social services provided by the state. For this reason, most contemporary Marxists have argued that women's liberation requires feminists to join the working-class struggle against capitalism. Cliff 1984. The feminist theorist argues that the work done at home is not work that is not being paid for. This line of reasoning strengthens many females throughout the Caribbean to be of the view that they should be paid or rewarded for every task they perform within the home. In some cases wives request that their husbands paid for sexual pleasures. As a result of the above describes, the capitalist mentality which exists within the world of profit and loss now envelopes the home. The position taken to remunerate wives for their effort in nurturing the children is also another issue. At the end of the month, week or fortnight, it is expected that the husband shares his income with the female. The feminist theorists argues extensively that the era in which middle and upper class women was purity, piety and domesticity, also called the cult of true womanhood, has ended. Women should be more efficient and productive in society. They further argue that women who stay at home are more prone to have several children. Too many children, according to the feminist, inhibit the female's potential of high productivity. The inclusion of women within the working class outside the home is a good means of controlling reproduction within the family. Beecher 1841, Richards 1915. To some extent the issue about decrease in reproduction in families where females work has some validity. In many Caribbean families, females who work tend to have less children than those who do not work. According to the feminist, the female becomes so caught up in the nurturing of children that they get caught up in a cycle of wanting to nurture children although their children have grown to a mature stage. The issue of women becoming hypnotized to believe their sole duty is to reproduce should never be promoted. The inclusion of women within the workplace eliminates this fallacy and creates a historical twist which advocates equality not only in the home but also in the wider society between male and female. The era of patriarchal household economies is now on the verge of ending. Aspects of this lifestyle exist in several regions in the world, example Asia. However, throughout North America, the Caribbean and Europe the patriarchal household has ended. In conclusion, it can be assumed that the arguments put forward by the feminist theorists are aimed at promoting the liberalization of women and the elimination of the sexual division of labor. Both men and women are purported to be equal. Many pro-patriarchal households view the feminist line of argument as materialistic. They argued that the feminist theorists failed to evaluate carefully the negative implications of the woman not being in the home performing the duties of nurturing. The expectation of being rewarded for every task done within the home by the woman is unrealistic. The man is not necessary in the position to make such great reward. This argument promotes the idea of greed amongst females. The income received by the male breadwinner is primarily the family's income. Many feminists argue that the man should allow the female to work. Yet they also argue that the man should support the woman for the task she still do while she works and takes care of the house. This breeds within itself a sense of inequality. Independence does not suggest the dependence on anyone for survival. When carefully evaluated, both argument for and against the idea that the woman's place is in the home seems logically. It is believed that the inherent culture of each family structure, type and existence within the Caribbean may be the final determinant of this age-old debate. Regardless of the woman's quest to work outside the home, they are still required to naturally take care of the home. The question is now asked, are they willing to live such a stressful life? Thanks for listening, subscribe for other future shares. Bye.